much stuff floating around. I don't know, people trying to say they wasn't together.
Basically was trying to get into a threesome. What is going on, ladies and gents? Welcome to another experience known as Kay and Manny. I'm the one they call Manny. She's the lady of all K's. And we have a special guest in the building.
Yes, and I just have to say, oh my gosh, this young, mature lady that we have the pleasure of joining us this Saturday morning. I would like everyone to welcome my pastor, Pastor Betty Grant, the senior pastor of Mountaintop Community Church. Welcome, Pastor Grant.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. It is a pleasure to be here, and I'm honored by the invitation by you and Manny. So I'm excited to get started on the subject matter today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pastor. Yes, the reason why Manny and I did this series to Death was part because we really feel like it is very imperative to the marriage community to get all the support they can get so they can continue because, you know, family brings value to the community. And we all know that sometimes it's not easy. So sometimes they need to see other people who has experience and went through it. And what a lot of y'all don't know, this beautiful lady right here has been married for 41 years. So she has powerful testimony to let you know, please don't give up on your spouse. So talk before I even go in that direction. One of the main questions I want to ask you first, Pastor, what should the foundation of marriage consist of?
Great question, and I'm so glad you asked. And the main foundation, the root to a marriage is the foundation of God, because God is the one who created the foundation of marriage at the very beginning of creation. So God seeks to make marriages the key foundation for your life. And so since he instituted it, the only way we can truly have a successful marriage is you have to go back to the foundation, which is God.
Absolutely.
Manny? Absolutely. I agree. First of all, Pastor, thank you for coming into our show. And one of the questions, like where I will be coming from, just to let you know, I will be coming from the perspective of, say, like either the younger generation or those who are not married, because I'm not married at this time, unfortunately, even though my dad keeps asking me when I'm going to get married. I keep telling him I don't know. But at the end of it, I am looking for a wife, not a girl, just so y'all know. But I do want to ask this question, and I promised Lady K that I will govern my words accordingly since we do have a pastor as our guest. One thing I wanted to ask you was, like, when it comes to marriage, like everyone has their definitions of what a marriage should look like, what it should be, or what it doesn't consist of. As of, you know, Lady K asked, like, what is your take on your definition of marriage? Because a lot of times people have a different definition of it.
That is true. People have different definitions because even from the very beginning, you have to be able to separate the fact that are you going into a secular marriage, which is a contract. And so we live in a secular society that bases marriage on contracts, when really a marriage should be based on a covenant relationship. So I always look at marriages as 4 parts. 1, God being the foundation of the marriage. 2, understanding your commitment to the marriage. 3, understanding the covenant relationship that you are making that commitment or that promise to, and then living out the promise that you stood there together and made to one another.
And when you say promise to one another, you're talking about the vows, correct?
I'm talking about the vow is actually the covenant. So you stand there, and that's what makes, because see, we separate the covenant from a contract. We start thinking, especially the generation that I counsel, they're thinking contract. Contract is something that has an end date or a fulfillment date. With a covenant marriage, the only fulfillment to that is death do you part.
Right. And I
That's
was
it.
going to ask you. I was going to ask you about that when you said what exactly is a contract marriage, and you pretty much defined it right there.
Okay.
My next question is that when you say younger people, or when you say you mentor younger people, of saying, okay, this is not a contract marriage where there is an ending to the said contract. It's more like till death do you part. Now, again, what advice would you give to the younger generation about marriage? Say, for example, and I'll give you an example. Like, for example, a younger couple, say like into their mid to late 20s or early 30s, whatever the case may be. They have this idea of what a marriage should be, but they see it from a perspective of, say, like their parents, or they see it on television, or they see it, say, from their friends or wherever. What is the one key? What is some advice would you give to them?
The one key advice I would give them is to understand what motivates you to first want to be married, because that's what's going to really set your desire apart, because everyone comes to any relationship, whether it be friendship, whether it be employee relationship, you come with a motivation, you come with your idea of what you're going to take away from that. And so when you come into marriage, it's not always about what you're coming in to take, but what do you come in to bring? What do you bring to the table? So for young people, what are you bringing to the table? Because a lot of times marriages fall apart by those things that we did not honestly make forward known about what we bring to the table. Yeah. We get sidetracked. I believe that we get sidetracked in the dating process. The dating process, in my opinion, as I teach, is to look for your prospective wife.
There you go.
Why are you dating?
Yes.
You know, and the dating process is really the interview, because you should already know what is it that you're looking for in a wife. Right. What will make you complete, right? What completes you? What your partner is the one that complements and complete you. It completes the family, one another. That's what you're doing together, right? And so what are you bringing? Some, you bring a bad credit score, but we don't ask those things in the dating process. Right. You don't even hear that he doesn't want children, but you want children, but nobody asks that question, right? So now these are the things that will create problems. He has anger issues. How do you resolve confrontation? Some are confrontational, some are not confrontational. Some deal really with their emotions, some don't deal with their emotion. We find that men don't talk, women talk, right? We find that in the dating process, you can see if you have a hearer or a listener. One who just hears what you're saying, or one that truly listens to what you're saying. And you can tell if he listened, because he'll start to present those things that he heard you say. He'll run ahead of you to get them done because he heard you. Vice versa. She has to hear him also, because a lot of times we are in a relationship infatuated and not by reality.
Ooh, Pastor, that was a whole word right there, because let me tell you something. I lived through some of those experiences, but because now that I am a little bit more mature, like you said, I'm listening now. And when I hear when you say something, I'll be like, oh, nope, I would never try to change you, because that ain't going to work for me. So I'm so happy that you said that, because I think a lot of women I don't mean to bash on the woman, but we hear what we want to hear. Oh, he said that, no, but I want, and he gonna do it because he gonna come around. No, to my ladies, please don't, because
he is not gonna come
he is
around.
not, because
He is who he is.
right. And to be honest, in the beginning, he's telling you what he's about, but we're so busy in our fantasy, like you said, because we created this fantasy and we're living in this world, and he already told you the truth. But that's just a message to the ladies, not to bash. I just want my ladies just to be more open-minded and just listening and really scout, like you said, Pastor, for the man that you want. So you said something profound in the beginning, because you said, people get married, right? And then in the beginning, you're excited, right? Oh, we married, and things are going on. And then here comes that bump, that hump. And then now you're talking about, you ain't, like you just said, you ain't the same person, even though in actual reality you're not supposed to. So when a person is going through that evolving stage, how do you deal with that? Because they're not who they were 10 years ago, and you're struggling and they're blossoming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with that?
That brings a lot of separation within the home or within the relationship, because we expect each person to stay the same. And from when you started dating them, and when you started holding hands, and and you moved to marriage. But the reality is coming in and being taught that you should not expect to remain the same, and nor should you expect your partner to remain the same. Hopefully you are maturing and growing, but can you be patient? While I just had this conversation today with my daughter. Can you be patient enough to allow me the time to work in those areas that God is trying to work also in me? Because we give up before we even get to the finish line. So many marriages give up because you see that person still struggling. She's still yapping. She's still complaining. She still wants this. She doesn't see me. She doesn't hear me. But are you actually giving her the time to work through those issues? Where she do and eventually will, because she's growing, she's maturing, and we give up on each other too soon. Men give up on the women because that thing that he feels he needs, she's not producing it fast enough for him, so then he's out. Vice versa. So who is going to be the mature one? Because then you'll have those that I'm trying to counsel with. A wife now is saying, but I want my marriage and I want my marriage to work. But if he's not saying the same thing, then what do we do?
Right.
What do? You have to have balance. You have to be able to come on one accord from the beginning. Am I going to allow you to grow through your issues? We all have issues.
Absolutely.
There's not one of us that don't have no issues. We come in. I always share with Kalima how I came from a single home family, a single parent home. So I only saw my mother be the man, be the go-getter, be the provider. Her word was the word that we abide by. She set the rules. So going into a marriage with, I didn't see that. It wasn't around me. Not that women in the church, the majority of the women in the church came to church by themselves with the children. We didn't see the husbands. We didn't know that there was a Mr. Grave or a Mr. Powell, even though he was home, but we didn't know that because we didn't see that interaction. So you take a woman who's raised by a woman who has presented before her daughters strength. I mean, strong. And then you put her in a relationship where she has to now learn how to compromise, how to allow a man to lead, and how to trust his leading.
That's great.
That's hard. Because
Yeah.
you already know, Pastor, and I'm gonna tell everybody else. But I tell everybody, I'm like, listen, I wasn't perfect, but that right there, I can definitely relate to that. And I feel sometimes there are a lot of ladies that's in the same similar like you and I were in Pastor. So I think that's how sometimes when you come into the relationship, it feels like there's a war going on because in all actual reality, ladies, it's our ego because of what we're used to. So you're like, no, I can't back down. Oh, and one more thing. Oh, this hit the nail right here. A lot of women be like, well, I don't want to be submissive. And I'm like, see, a lot of people don't even know what that word means. And I do because of this woman right here. So I will let this woman right here tell you the true definition of what submission truly means.
Mhm.
Yes, we have this understanding or presupposition that submission means allowing a man to walk over you, allowing him to rule over you, allowing him to give you permission. You can't do anything without his permission or his say so. And that's not submission. Submission, the Lord says, and Paul writes to the Corinthian church that men are commanded by God to love his wife as Christ loved the church and gave his life for her. Then he turns to the woman. He doesn't say that now wife turn around and love him. He says, women, submit to your husband. In other words, you submit to the level of love that he has to give you, because you submitted to that when you were dating him. But now that you're married to him, you don't want to submit. He didn't change it. That level of love, if he has always, when you were dating, um, you always had to, and I'm gonna talk to the ladies. You were paying the bills. You was paying for the dinners. You was paying for the vacations. You were paying for the children's school. You was paying for the babysitters. And now you mad and you angry and you miserable. But you remember, you forgot you submitted to his level of what he has to give. And he's never been one for really communicating. That was okay in the beginning, but now you want him to talk. Now you want him to express himself. Now you're bringing a lot on a man that you are supposed to had already understood by listening to him, his level.
Absolutely.
And how he loves you.
There you go.
And Pastor, while you was talking that word about how, wives submit to your husband, right? I was actually pulling up the word because I know it was in here, it's in Ephesians 5. But
Ephesians, yes.
A lot of people miss this part. See, before that scripture where it says wives submit to the husband, right before it says husband and wife submit to one another. And it's so amazing how people always forget that. And that came first. That came first before it says wives submit to the husband. And then after that, then it says husbands submit to Christ.
Right. That's right.
Yes.
Right. So, and you submit to Christ because if you're godly and you're walking in the ways of the Lord, it's because you love him.
Absolutely.
There you go.
You honor him, right?
Absolutely.
So as women, it's not a problem to submit to your husband when you love him. You love him. So you're submitting to his love for you. Right. And vice versa. You're submitting to the love she has for you and how she loves you.
That's
submit
great.
to the love. Submit to the love. That's what he's saying. Submit to the love.
And love is supposed to be unconditional, but we know as humans we put conditions to it, and it's natural. But
that's what makes the contract. Contracts are conditional. Covenants are unconditional.
Right. But it's so hard for a lot of people. But I think at this place, so I think sometimes like as a couple, they're going through certain battles and they're going over certain humps. Then they finally come to that common place where it took them a while, and then they can actually sit back and laugh about it because they've been through the valley and now they're on the mountain saying, wow, look where we came from.
Right.
you know, and then you get to appreciate it a little bit more. So when you
Right.
hear other people saying, oh, it don't work, you be like, you got no idea. Did you put the work in? And that's the thing too. I think what a lot of people feel they fail at is that they forget to date. So Pastor, I want you to talk about, you know, your dating experience with your husband and what
Yes.
that looks like.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I had no idea what I'm sharing this wisdom now, but in the dating process, when my husband and I were dating, he was pursuing me, and I had questions. I will always ask questions. How many children you want? We already knew. He want 4, I want 4. What kind of vegetables you like? What kind of meat you don't like? What are your interests? Are you a reader? Do you read books? Because I read books. Are you a poet? Because I like poetry. So those things, but not at the time understanding that that was interviewing him. And I understood. So we got to see the things that we had in common, but we also got to see the things that we didn't have in common. And were those things we didn't have in common, were they deal breakers?
Right.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right. Because, I mean, if she doesn't keep a clean house, that could be a deal breaker, right? I'm just saying, she can't cook could be a deal breaker. It might not be for some men because they're good cooks and they prefer to cook, right? So you
Right.
have to understand why you have that communication. So now my husband and I, we had gotten to a place where it was so much learning. I tell you, according to society, Manny, there's nothing that says that my husband and I should still be together 41 years later.
Right.
There's nothing that says that.
Mm.
It is really strange that we are still together 41 years later. We run into people from our childhood. You and Betty still together, still together. Every time I see you, y'all together, still together.
Mhm.
Because it's not expected.
Right.
It's not
Right.
expected, right?
It's
So
not the
we still,
norm. And a
it's
lot
not
of
the
times,
norm.
yeah, and a lot of times, especially in this society, and we'll get into that in just a moment, you know, you see a lot of marriages fail because of whatever reason. And on top of
Whatever.
that, they said, well, I never seen a successful marriage, or I've been part of a unsuccessful marriage. So my question to you is, to those who have never been a part of a quote unquote a successful marriage, or they witness a failed or hostile marriage as a child or as an adult, what would your advice to them to be? Or what would your advice to them be? Let me ask that question better.
My advice would be, if I could share with you my experience, which has caused my husband and I to overcome every obstacle you can think of.
Okay.
And I could lay that out. And the thing that I would lay out is the transparency. You have to be transparent with couples who are seeking to be married. And so that they understand that it is not a bed of roses, that you're going to have times when you're on the mountain, but you're also going to have times when you're in the valley. You're going to have times of disappointment. You're going to have times of tears. You're going to have times of heartbrokenness. You're going to have times of unwavering love where you're not sure if you even love the person anymore. Right. So I believe that for me, I would want them to know that if you allow me, I'll be as transparent as I can be. And I will tell you the truth. And I will not keep anything from you. Whatever your question is, ask. And I believe that that's what young people have to do. They have to be able to have someone that they have confidence in, that they could go to and they could sit with and they can ask. My husband and I didn't have marriage counseling. I believe that pre-marriage counseling is very good for couples. Right. Even if you're not really to the place where you're even engaged yet, but this person is a prospect. You know what I'm saying? This person you're being leaned more toward, wanting to be or spend your life with them. You just are too scared to even move to the next phase. So what do? We need you to come in. If you're dating, come in. If you've been dating over 6 months, come in. I think you should always seek counsel, godly counsel, not the world counseling.
Right.
They're not going to help you keep your marriage together.
Right.
Because like you said, Manny, They don't even have an example of a healthy, successful marriage. So what can they go by? Even some of their own parents have divorced.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I always say to, people around my age, even though a lot of their idolatries may be quote unquote old school, I look at my parents. They've been married for over 44 years. And I've told this story before that when my dad was hospitalized and my mom texted me saying, I'm about to take a walk with your dad. And even though that don't mean much to a lot of people, it meant a lot it said a lot to me, saying like, this is what marriage is about, because here's my father who's in the hospital, which reasons I will not disclose in this podcast. My mom is right there by his side 40 some years plus later.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of people, a lot of younger couples or newer couples don't understand the term till death do us part, meaning like, yes, sometimes both are going to be up here, both are going to be down here. And sometimes one's going to be up and the other one's going to be down.
Absolutely.
And it's just
That's
like,
right.
it's up to the person here. This is when you're married, of course. It's up to the person here to say, I got you.
That's right. That's right.
It's something like that. But I also want to switch gears because I see a lot of things within marriages that are, I feel like they're being a little disruptive, and I'll explain. Certain lifestyles or certain ideas are kind of coming into the factor of relationships or marriages. Example given. I'm not sure if you're familiar with a polyamorous lifestyle, whereas the couple has another. Okay, you're familiar with it. Okay, so I see stuff like that, and then I'll see stuff like I heard not too long ago. Don Cheadle, actor Don Cheadle, just married his girlfriend of 28 years. Like, I'm thinking, 28 years? It took you that long to figure out that you're found the love of your life that's been by your side for 28 years. All of a sudden you're saying, all right, I'm ready to say I do now. And I'm like, okay. But do you feel certain lifestyles are disrupting the sanctity of marriages?
Definitely.
I want to ask that question respectfully, because I know a lot of people may think, well, why are you judging us? No, I'm simply asking a question here.
Right.
And I want to get your opinion per se, because of what everything is going on. And Lady K, I also want to get your opinion as well. So we'll start with you, Pastor.
I definitely feel that it is bringing disruption into a marriage. And the thing is that when two people are in agreement and they're one, there's nothing that they cannot do. And the Bible tells us that, it will come a time when men will do anything and everything that seems right in their own heart. So as you were saying, we're not judging, you just asking me my opinion. But I also know where this, how this evolves into the home and the relationship is that, again, if you're coming into it as a contract, because now you're going to change and make amends to the contract, we can now be open. We can now have other partners, so you're adding amendments, addendums to a contract. And a covenant, you have already made the promise to what? To be committed faithfully to one another. So does that covenant, has it been broken? In many marriages, the covenant has been broken, or that promise has been broken. But it was that thing that having God in your heart and going to him in prayer, that it may give you the strength to rise up. Like you said, the one partner was here and the other one fell off. But that love is there so much so that even though it's going to take time, but you're still going to hang in here because you believe in the person that you committed your life to, and you see the potential that he can be or she can be all that you have believed him or her to be. And so you're going to allow God to do that. But when you allow the society's ideas and ideologies to come in, who's to say that for you guys it don't work? But for us, that's not how I'm playing this game. I ain't going out like that. I'm just gonna let it. I ain't going out like that. I don't want that kind of relationship. And I'm glad my husband and I are on one accord with that.
Right.
We're one in our faith and our belief that what holds the sanctity of our marriage together.
Amen.
There you go. Lady Kay, what's your thoughts on what
Okay.
question I just asked?
So a couple of months ago, Tabitha Brown, for a lot of people who don't know her, she's like a social media she's out there, like she's an actress, she's well known, she's a vegan, right? So she made a comment one day on a post and she said, I'm finally able to retire my husband after 16 years and I'm so excited. And you can see the excitement on her face. So as we know, our girl Wendy Williams had something to say about that. So Wendy was like,
our girl?
Yeah, Wendy Williams.
I'm with you, Manny. I'm with
that
you.
word off. Please.
Yeah.
Thank y'all for throwing me under the bus. But
you're welcome.
I'm going somewhere with this. Wendy Williams said a comment about, I wouldn't do that if I was you. God gives them the opportunity to walk out and leave you and all he gonna do is leave, right? Mm-hmm. So I thought about the foundation of her relationship. She allowed him to go outside the home and do the things that he was doing. She embedded that. See, but a lot of people don't understand is that when you start allowing stuff, you never know what the consequences is going to come later. And that was because of your foundation. So I respect Tabitha so much. Her clap back was, well, Wendy, let me tell you something what me and my husband did. Because my husband believed in me. So she said, it took me 16 years to make it in this industry. And she said, and I want to reward him for, by retiring him because he held me down while I chased my dreams. That set the tone and that speaks volume over everything. And we built our foundation, our relationship on God. And I was like,
that's right. That's right.
And I'm saying this because you can't put your experience on other people because every foundation is built differently.
There you go.
Obviously, Tabitha and her husband foundation was built on the word of God.
That's right.
And that's my perspective like that. But guys, I am having a great time. Pastor, I thank you so much. We're almost running out of time. So we're going to get everybody closing remarks and then we're going to have to end for the day. So Manny, what's your closing remarks?
My closing remarks is simply this, and I'm speaking from a perspective of an unmarried man. It's good to listen to the perspective of married people because one of my morals and principles, and hopefully we can have a show about that, it's good to listen to the advice of those who were successful at it, i.e. Pastor Grant, i.e. my parents, my grandparents when my grandfather was alive. My grandparents were married for almost 60 plus years before my grandfather passed. So it's good to understand that what the foundations of your marriage is and understand what is your foundation of your marriage, because a lot of times it's built on quicksand because you, as Pastor would say, it's based on a contract. All contracts end and most people break their contracts. And then on top of that, some people don't honor their contracts.
Absolutely.
So guess what? When you're on a covenant, you're answering to something higher than said contract. You're answering to a covenant. You're answering to God. You're answering to everything that he stood for and has basically embedded in you to not only implement in your marriage, but also teach others behind you or younger than you as far as what a marriage is supposed to be. So it's good to have good examples of those type of relationships versus looking at, say, social media or reality show to define what a marriage or a partnership or a contract is based on. So it's good that you should understand and understand and have good examples and good teachers with that.
Amen.
Manny.
I have to say amen.
Yeah, let the church say amen.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
I'm gonna save the best for last, and that's for you, Pastor Betty Grant. But I'm gonna go and I'm gonna let you go. Me personally, I want people to know, if you were married the first time and you failed, please do not ever say, oh, I'm not getting married because it failed, because I am a living testimony that yes, my first marriage fails, but because I got the proper teaching and now I have the better mindset, I can say that I do want to get married for the second time, but I know the second time I do it, I'm in a better position, and he's not going nowhere because I'm not doing this again.
Fellas.
My closing remark. Now I'm gonna give the floor to Pastor Betty Grant.
I thank you both again for having me on and allowing me to, share just a little nuggets or drop a few nuggets from my experience of having been married 41 years. And and we use the word a successful marriage. I can say that successful can be taken out of context, but I can say it has endured. Our marriage has endured because God says that the race is not given to the swift nor the strong, but to him who endures to the end. So we have a marriage that has endured every obstacle you can think of during this time in our lives, and yet we know that whatever comes in front of us, together we're still going to be able to overcome because we have come through with 41 years. But I like what Manny said as well. The examples that I did have, Manny, which I took and I still carry to this day, came from my grandparents and my great-grandparents who did not divorce. It was till death did them part. And my great-grandmother gave me a wonderful word. She said, listen, don't start something in that marriage that you're not going to continue to do during the duration of the marriage. If you're not going to iron his shirts, don't start. If you're not going to fix his plate, don't start. And I understood that. She said, because it will bring conflict in the relationship. And you don't want to do that. And so I took that as advice, but they were definitely examples of marriages that endured obstacles and life. And so I thank you for adding that. And thank you both for having me. And don't forget, if you're married, still date.
Right.
Continue to date, because you still get to hear what is in one another's heart. So continue to date. It's important. Don't stop dating.
Thank you, Pastor. I really do appreciate that. And I hope that this resonated in someone's spirit, because as I said, we're bringing forth truth to the marriage community. So somebody can be in a rut right now, and just by hearing this powerful word, they needed it and it helped them. So I'm saying that if it can help you, it can help somebody else. So please definitely share this video. But with that being said, I want to thank everyone joining us this morning at 11 a.m. and continue to follow us here at the Lady K Chat Podcast, the Kay and Manny Show, that comes on every Saturday at 11 a.m. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, and we're also on IG. And you could also visit our website at www.ladykenterprisesinc.com, because this show is sponsored by Lady K Enterprises, where they are a financial service firm and media services. So everyone have a blessed day, and thank you.
Thank you.
Lady K.